Dr. Natalie Edmond here, and I am been working on a blog or thinking about a blog. I actually wrote it today on 10 steps to be a better white ally. So I've been working on this, like, how do I communicate, like, all I've been thinking about this year related to how to be a better ally, how to be a better white ally, to be more specific. So I came up with, I started writing this blog, and, part of it was like reflecting on um, what's changed since COVID, since George Floyd's murder around Memorial Day, and all the work that I've been doing myself, like, looking at grief and rage and anger and how I've used it to try to heal myself and my circle of influence and like all the anti-racism workshops I do every week. And I've had some really amazing, meaningful conversations with white people in particular around how they can be better allies. And I've done some trainings with Dr. Kenneth Hardy, and I love the way he talks about the ways in which we can have intimate conversations that lead towards healing versus harm. And so I think about like post-election, there's still so much pain there, right? Like just because we have a new president doesn't undo what's been uncovered the last 4 years. It doesn't actually change much except potentially cause certain things to go underground again. I saw somebody said recently, like once President-elect Biden was declared the winner, that now we can go back to regular racism. And I thought, like, that is so true, right? That racism has been going on for so long. And so, like hundreds of years. And so I thought, okay, this is what I've kind of learned as like my to-do list. That it's not really a to-do list because it's like something to embody, right? To think that you can undo a lifetime of conditioning as a white person in 6 months, not possible, but you can make a dent. So I'm going to share the top 10 things. I'm sure my list will keep growing, but I'll share them with you. So the first thing I think to be a better white ally is to know that you're white. What does that mean um, for you as an individual, right? That we can't keep pointing the finger at other people and comparing how they might be more racist. Like we really have to look at your own whiteness and how does that show up? How did that show up in your family? What's your family's immigration story? Um, and really looking at how you take up space in rooms because of your perceived race and power and privilege. Second is learn about U.S. history, learn about redlining, learn about segregation, learn about current racist policies and ideas, learn the ways in which both Republican and Democratic parties have had racist ideas and racist policies. Looking at it in your own local communities, how does that show up? Like, move away from racial indifference or racial awareness to racial sensitivity and racial responsibility. But we can't do that without seeing how in our own homes or in our own communities, no place has been left unharmed by the forces of racism. Third step is listen to the voices of BIPOC individuals. They've been talking for a really long time, right? There are books written, there are blogs, there are podcasts, there are people in your own life, who have been pained, who have their own stories, and to listen to those voices, to pay to learn from that, and to not overburden them with getting your education, right? Because that is not their responsibility. So not only to listen to them, but also to support their work, right? How do you support BIPOC businesses as a form of reparations? Ask yourself regularly as part of step four, what am I doing to dismantle racist policies and racist ideas and to disrupt white supremacy, right? Like on a daily basis. Step five, examine your relationship to conflict, right? Because if you cannot tolerate conflict, it's going to be really difficult to have conversations with people who believe differently than you. So evaluate, what was conflict like in your home growing up? What was intensity like? What were the consequences of naming a difference of opinion? and starting to work through that, either individually or perhaps in therapy or in groups. Number 6, increase your capacity for intensity, right? That to be able to tolerate rage and grief from other people, that you have to have the capacity to know it's just feeling, it's just sensations. It might be really uncomfortable, and yet that is part of how we heal. That is part of how we have honest dialogues, and that your responsibility as a white person is to carry the load, to carry the burden. Because you are not just a white person as an individual, you are part of a collective. And in the United States, that has a particular history of harming others. And so sometimes that pain, that anger, that emotion directed at you is not really about you. It's about so many other harms that have been done. So let's focus on impact versus intent. Number 7, increase your vulnerability and intimacy in relationships. So really start to think about how do you make yourself more vulnerable in these race dialogues, right? That instead of pointing the finger at people, instead of trying to be self-righteous or separate yourself from other white people, to really start to see how you share similar stories, how you've all been influenced by this larger white supremacist society, and really start to look at, okay, like as a white person or as a white cis female or as a white teacher or as a white therapist, this is how I feel. This is what I've done. This is the harm I've caused. Because we can have intensity with intimacy, and that is really powerful. But intensity without intimacy causes a lot of harm because we forget that people are full human beings and that they are not all one thing, right? There is complexity. So step 8 is work on transparency, congruency, and authenticity, right? So how do you show more of your full self, right? Shame often gets in the way of us showing our full selves. We leave parts of ourselves at the door, at work, at school, because we feel like we will not be accepted for our fullness. And that is, there's grief with that. And also this idea like congruence, right? Does what I say match what I do? Do I do what I say I was going to do? Am I talking about something really serious and painful, but it's disconnected from my body and my emotions? And what are ways that I can be more authentic in my life, right? That, when you're talking to a BIPOC person, they kind of know if you're congruent. They know if you sound authentic, right? That it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to be imperfect. But silence, we have to move beyond that, right? That paralysis, we have to move beyond that. We have to work towards racial responsibility. Step 9 is welcome complexity, right? Move away from hierarchies and binary notions and black and white thinking, which our brain loves because it simplifies the world. But we really need to work on both and dual realities and multiple truths, that we have to tolerate all of that in order to really be able to hear other people and their pain and their stories, because the stories matter. Step 10 is to think about being a white ally on a continuum and as a lifelong process. Embrace imperfection, embrace humbleness, and embrace that this is going to take a long time, and that much of anti-racism work is done in the background. You don't get a lot of applause for it, and yet you know that it matters to the lives that you touch and the people that you help. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope you'll read my full blog, which goes into more detail, and that I hope that you'll show up to conversations, right? Either ones that I'm having a race dialogue post-election, not too distant future, as well as another anti-racism series in January. We'll be looking at me and white supremacy, and I'm sure we'll do other things throughout the year. But do this in community, right? That we can heal together. May you be well. May you be peaceful. May we all be free.